So in today's video, I'm going to talk about things that I think people need to know before they buy a house in the Hampton Roads area that can be extremely costly, and things that you might not have budgeted for that if you find out too late, it might make you wish you had bought a different house altogether. And we're starting right now. So the Hampton Roads area that goes from Virginia Beach through Williamsburg is a very old-ish type of area. Lots of houses that are new, but also houses built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and everything in between. And because this area has slowly grown over time, and a lot of houses were built in different time periods, you start to find different trends in neighborhoods and in houses that can cause problems and cost a lot of money to rectify or change, or make someone wish that they had been in a different place altogether. Number one is cast iron pipes. And so you hear me talk a lot about cast iron pipes in houses that were built in like the 30s, the 40s, 50s, and 60s and prior. What you'll find is waistline pipes that run from the house to the street, and also plumbing in the houses themselves can be made of this cast iron pipe or galvanized pipe that can corrode and break down from the inside. And the reason why this is a problem is because you don't know that the pipes could break down until it's too late. Tree roots can find themselves growing into the pipes over the course of 60, 70, 80 years. As the time goes by, you don't know that there's a problem. And so when you maybe flush the toilets and you have slow drainage, you could find a big, severe problem in a main line, which can lead to thousands and thousands of dollars. Primarily, the main line going from the house to the street is the most costly line. That can be, I've seen it be $10,000 or more dollars just to replace it. So that's something that if you buy an older house, like pre-70s, this is something to be very aware of. Now next, if you are not familiar with a high moisture content area, you might not be aware of the damage that termites and moisture damage can cause to a house, which is the next one is termites and moisture. So this area is a high moisture content area. You find humidity is high all across the area. And the majority of houses in this area are built on crawl spaces, which means you can go under the house and you have wood that the house is resting on, and that wood runs across the entire frame of the house. So if there is a high moisture content around the house, that moisture can break the wood down, the structure of your house down with moisture damage, fungus, and also termites that are attracted to that moisture. And then termites can eat into the property, and it can cause thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage. And you may have read about these before. It can be a big problem. Now you've got slabs and you've got crawl spaces in the Hampton Roads area. Slabs, you can still have termites in slab houses, just so you know, but there's just a lot less wood that termites and moisture might be attracted to. So I would suggest always getting a termite moisture inspection when you get your house, whether it be slab or crawl space. However, especially with crawl spaces, you're going to find a lot of wood that can be susceptible to damage with moisture and then termites. So people often think, well, I'll just move away from water, and that might help a lot too. That's not necessarily the case. This area, because of the high moisture content across the entire area, you don't have to live near water, like on the shore, to not deal with these problems. So it's a pretty much all across the area issue. I would definitely suggest getting a termite and moisture contract with a reputable company locally. The way to fix this is often replacing or repairing wood, and also termite and fungus treatments that treat the houses themselves and kill any fungus or active termites. Now, there are also things like powder post beetles that can be a problem as well. There are other things that can bore holes into wood, but in general, just know that termite and moisture inspections are very important, and you make sure you get a contract with a termite and moisture inspector locally that can help prevent any of these issues moving forward. Now, one thing I want to mention too about termite and moisture damage and termites and moisture in general that can cause damage to a house is that the name termites, the word termites and moisture damage can sound very scary. And I think that can be used to make things that aren't as big a deal sound a lot worse. And so I would just be aware that just because your house might even have some evidence of termites does not mean the house is falling apart. You just have to do more research to find out the scope of what's going on. So that leads me to number 3, which is a very common problem in a very specific time window of construction, which is quest piping or polybutylene piping. That's plumbing. In the late 70s into the early to mid 90s, there was a thing called quest piping or polybutylene piping that was the type of plumbing that was installed in houses during that time. Not every house had it, but it was a very common thing back then. And so what it was known to do, it was mainly the fittings were causing problems. They were rupturing, and you might be living in your house and all of a sudden one of your pipes burst. And that happened a lot. And people had to often replumb their whole houses or a lot of their house because of this problem. Now, there are different phases of this quest piping, which can also affect how much of a concern this could actually be. Not all the phases are as bad, if you will, or as risky. That being said, just you have to be very aware that the house you're looking for is built in the late 70s into the mid 90s. Make sure you talk to your home inspector about if they can determine if there is any piping, this quest piping that is still currently in the house. They can't know for sure, but you can at least get a good idea and also talk to anybody else that might have any past experience or understanding with the house just to see if anybody else can know. Now, it's been, decades since this has been installed mostly. So at this point, there are a lot of houses that may have had it that has been replaced. You might see copper pipes now instead of quest. But just know that this is a common issue, especially in those age range houses. So the next is leaves. Okay, why am I talking about leaves? Well, I talk a lot about houses that are in old established neighborhoods in Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, all through Williamsburg. I mean, really, anyway, I love neighborhoods that have old trees and just a lot of foliage. What happens? We're in a four seasons area. That means that leaves fall in the fall and they dump a lot. Pine needles too, a lot of foliage. And so what happens is that not only does it often make it hard to grow grass, which can make it more expensive to maintain your property, it can kill the grass because leaves can just block the sun, but it also can block drains, it can block gutters, so it affects drainage as well. And so you might have a drainage area near your house that might be affected by leaves that might make water pond in the roadways more frequently, and it can dump on your roof. Like so, our house, we had a massive tree right behind our house that would just dump leaves all over the top of the roof. And of course, it affects the life of the roof. Leaves create a lot of costly things that over time, if you don't attend to them, can be a lot more expensive than you might expect. So the next one is flooding in basements. And so people often, they think, well, if I'm not in a flood zone, do I need to worry about flooding at all? Well, the answer is you still have to be very aware because basements, especially in Norfolk, you've got high water table areas. And so in Norfolk, especially because there are a lot more basements in Norfolk, you've got, a basement that's built underground. It's in the ground. And so you have often water that can seep into the basement. You can often have water that I have a client that lived in a house that did not require flood insurance, but it had a basement, and they'd find an inch or two of water in their basement. So they originally thought they could expect to store things like on the ground in their basement, but because of the water that can get into the basement, like they couldn't do that anymore. But it's something that people forget until they get a basement and they realize, I wish I had accounted for that a lot earlier. Now, the next one is not a house specific thing, but it's a lifestyle choice thing, which is tolls. And I've talked a lot about tolls before, but people don't often think about where they're living and how much it might cost them to commute from place to place, factoring in these tolls. There's one in Deep Creek. The Dominion Bridge has a toll that goes from closer towards the Greenbrier section ish of Chesapeake down towards Grassfield. And also the tunnels, the downtown and midtown tunnels going from Portsmouth to Norfolk. So connect, like splitting the eastern side of the south side of Hampton Roads to the west side. That also can be a costly toll. So if you plan to buy on one side of the area and drive to the other, you need to factor these tolls in because you might see a house that's cheaper online. You're like, oh, I can buy over in Portsmouth and drive over to Norfolk. Well, not so fast. Make sure that you factor in the costs of driving from one side to the other and paying tolls both ways. And another thing with the tolls is make sure you get an Easy Pass because the cost to pay the toll with an Easy Pass, which is the little piece, the plastic piece that fits in your windshield, and you just drive through and the picture scans the box and charges you, that's a lot cheaper than the alternative, which is if they can't see your Easy Pass, they're going to take a picture of your plate and mail you a bill. And that bill could be double or more of what it's going to cost to just pay the Easy Pass, and it'd be a lot easier. Another thing is surveys. So I've talked a lot about surveys because surveys can be a big deal. The reason why surveys can matter is because zoning can affect what you can do to your property, what's on your property, where the lines are, and also maybe if something has been done to the property in the past that the survey can identify as well. And so you might find, for example, in Norfolk, a lot of things have happened over the last 50, 70, 80, 100 years of developing and zoning in Norfolk that have changed that can affect, if a house that was built in 1930, well, the zoning may have most likely have changed since 1930. So your house now might be in a different type of zoning, which might affect what you can do to the property. And also, if your house is still zoned properly. So it can be costly. So you might not be allowed to do specific things to the property just based on how the lot lines are configured. It's going to cost like, a few $100s to get a survey, but it's definitely good to get one up front just so you know, because in the very, very off chance that there is an issue that might affect your livability in the property, you'd probably wish you knew that earlier in the process. Another thing is in older houses here is there's often a lack of insulation or just not as much insulation as you might feel that you need because these older houses, like the walls, they can often let a lot of cold or hot air in. And so your energy bills might be up because of the type of house that you're buying. Your windows might be affecting your energy bills, as well as, again, the insulation in the walls and in the ceiling, or sometimes even crawl space, which is not always necessary, I would say. But my point here is that just know that when you're buying an older house, you might not have the same insulation that you feel that you might want or that you might get in a newer house. So isn't this another drawback to buying older houses, is you might not get the same insulation and the same uniformity of temperature as you might get with a newer house, which means you might be paying more to heat and cool your house. So if you have any more questions about relocating to Hampton Roads, which is Virginia Beach in Norfolk, Chesapeake through Williamsburg, let me know. I'm a real estate agent, and this is what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have any questions, you can drop a comment, email, call, text at any point, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.